Doctor Strange is about to die today on Comicstorian. This is where I take your favorite comic books, I break them down into an audio drama, I cut out all of the fluff and the extra stuff and give you the bare bones synopsis. We then read it back to you dramatically so that you can enjoy what's going on in the world of comics, but there's still plenty for you to go out and collect. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems. Recently, Marvel did a massive crossover, which contained about 15 issues called The Death of Doctor Strange. We have compiled all of those issues into a multi-part series right here at Comicstorian. Today we're going to be starting that with issues 1 and 2, and then one of the crossover issues, The Avengers, to see how they react to the death of Doctor Strange. If you want to keep this channel alive and get early access to our videos, check out our Patreon, but let's start this video. Doctor Strange's bedroom is a collection of magical artifacts and old records. He lays in bed, curled up beneath the blankets and his cloak of levitation, but a voice interrupts his slumber. Doc, time to get up! Bats calls floating through the door right up to his face. Time for walkies! You're burning the daylight! And the ghostly basset hound does not leave the Sorcerer Supreme alone. So Strange opens up an eye, pointing out that since Bats is a ghost, he no longer requires walkies. Walkies are for you! Bat says, pointing out that it's for Strange's health. Strange finally relents, getting out of bed, going through his morning ritual. He puts on his clothes and he heads down to the kitchen where he finds Wong making breakfast. Have you been filling Bat's head with worries about my cardiac fitness? He asks as Wong hands him a coffee. Wong smiles and Strange takes it, heading out the door. Enjoy walkies. And they move through the streets of New York with Strange telling Bats that he's far too busy to die. Not sure that's how it works, Bat says, giving Strange the side dog eyes. The day passes quickly with Strange heading to the hospital for surgery, his hands finally having healed after all of these years. It's all so new to him again. And afterwards, he stands out on the balcony drinking his coffee, but his head turns as a magical explosion rips through the city. He doesn't hesitate, leaping into the air, carrying himself along a magical current. Nearby, the police are raising their weapons as the man kneeling in the street continues to exude magical energies. You need to power down now, one of the officers shouts, his finger moving towards the trigger on his pistol. That will be quite enough, officers, Strange says as he comes up behind them, marching through the police force, telling them he'll handle the situation. He doesn't need a bullet, he needs a doctor. Doctor Strange immediately recognizes the villain as Mr. Rasputin, but he also knows the man's real name. He tells Plownick that he is here to help, and Plownick tearfully explains he just wanted power, and that it's dying. Something is dying. Strange asks what it is, and Plownick responds with 2 questions, 1 answer, Cinnabus. Strange realizes that Plotnik has linked himself with another dimension which is causing his distress. He is able to use his third eye to see the link, and he pulls the thread off of Plotnik's body, severing it with a pair of magical scissors. And in an instant, Plotnik stops his screaming, and the energy exploding out of him dissipates. There. Is that better, Mr. Plotnik? He asks, and Plotnik nods. It's gone. It's quiet. He says quietly, and Strange nods, turning the man over to the police, ordering them to take him to the hospital. And with that, he checks his watch, realizing that he is needed elsewhere. He goes over to Strange Academy, where he finishes his lesson on the history of the Sorcerer Supreme and how one day a new sorcerer will be chosen to take his place. But the bell rings and class is over, and Strange walks out of the room and is followed by the flame-headed Doyle, who desperately needs his attention. Doyle says that something weird is going on and asks if he's heard from his father. Strange shakes his head, having heard nothing from Dormammu recently. What do you mean by weird? Doyle explains that he is connected to the dark dimension and feels that something isn't right. But I'm in the dark here. It's driving me crazy, he says, and Strange nods, explaining that this isn't the first time that he's heard about this. But they're interrupted by the intercom, which asks Strange to come to the baseball diamond. Outside, he quickly joins Magic in her fight against the incursion from the limbo dimension. Gobble their souls! Crack their bones! The creatures are shouting. I'm having a bit of an odd day, but this strikes me as excessively odd, Strange notes to Magic. Agreed. As the Sorcerer Supreme of Limbo, this is embarrassing. I work here, you horrible creatures, she shouts as she swings her sword, chopping off another monster's head. Together, Magic and Doctor Strange work together, finally capturing the last of the creatures, throwing them back through the portal. And afterwards, they both breathe easier. We should speak with Dr. Voodoo about increasing the magical warding. Magic notes and Strange nods, but is needed elsewhere. The rest of the day passes for the Sorcerer Supreme, but there are magical attacks mixed with a lunch with bats on the couch, chess in the park with an extra-dimensional being, and a good old-fashioned store robbery. That night, Strange finally has time to relax, sitting in his comfy chair with his feet soaking, and he leans back sighing. But a knock at the door forces him to open his eyes again. He stalks downstairs, grumbling about how he should be relaxing instead of entertaining visitors. And before he goes to answer the door, he says to himself that Doctor Strange is never tired and never rumpled. So he swirls magic around him, dressing himself up as the Sorcerer Supreme once more, opening the door and raising an eyebrow at the sight of his visitor. Strange looks at the visitor and simply says how odd. The visitor gives him an evil smile, telling him that it is his last day. Magic slams around Strange, pinning his arms to his side, preventing any spells, and the stranger stalks forward, a knife in his hands. Go on then, but be warned, this will not end the way that you wish. Strange snaps at him, and all goes black. The heroes of the magical community felt it in an instant. The death of the Sorcerer Supreme. Thor saw it as a tear in the barrier of dimensions, and Reed Richards' sensors detected it next. By the time they all arrived at Bleecker Street, it was far too late. Doctor Strange was dead, laying in a pool of his own blood, his hands severed from his body, and they all began to grieve, not believing that Stephen could really be gone. But the door opens as Mordo walks in, demanding to know who has taken his right to murder Strange. Wong is furious, demanding to know why Mordo would have done this, but after being restrained by Brother Voodoo and Zelma, Mordo informs him that there is nothing that he desired more than Strange's death, but at his hands and no others. He was mine to kill, Mordo tells Wong simply. Zelma is just shocked, but she turns her head as Stephen's Avengers ID card begins to beep, and she picks it up with the voice of Captain America filling the room. This is an emergency, miss. We need Strange. We're tracking multiple extra-dimensional invasions, Captain America informs her, and Zelma is just staring in shock as an image of Earth and multiple attacks appear. Wong, Voodoo, Kellicus, and Mordo begin to argue, with bats howling, and then there's a sudden bright light as magical beings all turn in shock as a portal opens up, and out steps Stephen Strange. But it's not the Stephen Strange of today, but the one of the past. Zounds! If I've been released, then the worst must have happened. We must move quickly. There isn't much time for me to solve my own murder. Tell me, what year is it? He pulls on his gloves. The magical incursions are happening across the entire world. Agamon was the first to strike, transporting a vast swath of purple dimensional energy into the Gobi Desert. Dagoth razed the sunken city of Kulamesh from the sea floor off the coast of Cornwall. Tyboro claimed his ancient territory in the jungles of Peru. Umar manifested a portion of her kingdom in Antarctica. Meanwhile, Doctor Strange looked at the stunned faces of those gathered around him. I fear that there may be some of you who do not know who I am. I apologize for the strangeness of my entrance. I presume that I have been murdered. He turns to Wong. Wong, excellent. And Mordo, what a surprise to find you here with my corpse. And Kellicus, you look like hell, old man. Strange notes, looking at those that he recognizes, then he leans over his body as Kellicus shouts about having been exiled into the Purple Dimension. The Purple Dimension? I fear that was after my time. He says, and everyone continues to question what is even going on. The Strange from the past explains that many years ago, he severed 1 week from his life to hide it away. A precaution, so that if I were to die, a part of myself, a temporal remnant, could ensure that my affairs were placed in order, that my killer would be brought to justice. Zelma is still in shock, looking down as she realizes that Captain America is still speaking to her, so she holds it out to Doctor Strange, explaining that it's for him. He holds it up, surprised to see Captain America. Strange, we need you to get it together. We have multiple invasions from different dimensions going on. This is your wheelhouse, Doctor. Captain America quickly explains, but Strange just nods. The Stephen Strange that you know has been killed, Captain. As it appears that you are friends, allow me to offer my condolences. I am an excerpt from your timeline, kept in reserve in order to investigate my own murder. Captain America pauses at this news for a moment. Of course, he says simply, and Stephen nods, explaining that they merely need to summon the Sorcerer Supreme. Who is the Sorcerer Supreme of this time period? He asks, looking at those gathered around him. Moments later, Stephen is shocked that not only was he the Sorcerer Supreme, but that the world now is without its chief defender of the mystical arts. He finally snaps out of it with Wong's prodding, asking Captain America if the invasions are attacking populated areas. No, Doctor, they seem to be digging. Steve explains and Stephen nods, explaining that they just need to ignore them and that the invaders seem to be running from something. But he turns as he hears a voice in his head. Strange, they're coming for me, I need you. She shouts, and Stephen rushes outside, looking up as a woman appears out of thin air, dropping into his arms. Stephen, I knew you'd be here to catch me. Clea whispers weakly, and he puts her down, recognizing her as the young woman from the dark dimension that he met years ago. But Clea looks at him. You're not Stephen. Who are you? What are you? She asks, and Wong rushes out, seeing Clea and asking why the dimensions are invading. They're not invading, they're fleeing. She gasps at him, and Wong continues to question her, not aware that a hand is reaching out from a portal. I'm being hunted. And everyone turns as a portal opens up and a mass of fleshy worms drops in. So this is where my prey has fled to. Can you smell it, sisters? Can you taste it? The richness of it, magic. The Crown asks, and Strange raises his hands, magical energy beginning to burn as his friends stand at his back. Begone, monsters! This woman is under the protection of the Mask of Black Magic. He shouts, and nearby Baron Mordo and Calicus do nothing. Huh, I'd forgotten you used to call yourselves that. Mordo grins, bidding them farewell as he steps through a portal. Enjoy dying a second time this evening, Stephen. We must be off. Mordo says, and the Crown steps forward, asking if the people of this world truly plan to stand against them. Yes, and here's your only warning. We don't stand alone. Avengers, assemble! Captain America shouts as he, Iron Man, Captain Marvel, and Thor drop into the street. Strange steps up to them, warning the captain to be wary. I see their power. They're after the girl. He says, and Steve raises his eyebrow. Do you mean your wife? He asks, and Stephen turns in shock. My what? He gasps, and the Crown steps forward, raising her massive sword. Enough talking! Let's test this world! Thor leaps forward as a bolt of lightning, his hammer colliding with the Crown's sword. This one has the smell of a godling. Delicious! Iron Man and Captain Marvel launch towards the Word and the Crawling, but their attacks do nothing and both are knocked away by the counterattacks. Thor is quickly beaten back by the Crown, and Tony is slammed against a wall by the Crawling, her fleshy worms slipping through his armor. They're in my suit! They're in my suit! He shouts, and the armor begins to burn. In moments, the Avengers are beaten. Do not worry for our child, sister. Tell me that we may find enough to sustain him here. The Crawling says, releasing Iron Man to the ground, and the Word drops Captain Marvel and Captain America, creating a portal for her sisters and disappearing. The Crown turns back to them before she steps through the portal. Keep the woman Magi. We will return for her in a good time. After all, anticipation is the best seasoning. She says, stepping through the portal, and Stephen looks at the fallen heroes scattered around him. Zounds, he whispers. The storyline now moves into the death of Doctor Strange, the Avengers crossover issue. The Florida Everglades. Several of the extra-dimensional creatures are moving through the swamplands, carrying a massive nuclear bomb with them. One looks around. The Guardian of the Nexus, the Man-Thing, where is he? One asks, and another explains that with the death of the Sorcerer Supreme, the Guardian has abandoned his post. They come to a clearing, marveling at the portal that leads to the realms of all realities. It's beautiful, another gasps as they put down the bomb while a warrior begins to activate it. The Nexus can only be destroyed from within, so one of us will have to plant the bomb and return with all haste. I would prefer not to, just putting that out there. He notes quietly as the bomb is activated and the warrior stands, but the others stare in horror as a large creature steps through it. Boy, behind you! Someone shouts, but the Juggernaut comes rushing in, knocking the creatures aside as they scream in terror. Meanwhile, at Tony Stark's brownstone, he continues to scrub himself clean in the shower, thinking about how badly he needs a drink. He can see the Crawling when he closes his eyes, feel the worms of her body on his skin. He turns off the shower, ordering his AI to run another scan on his body and armor, to make sure that there's nothing alien inside. Scan complete. No xenobiological material detected. Boss chimes in. Tony sinks to the floor, putting his head in his hands. Run it again! He says quietly. Meanwhile, Steve Rogers, Carol Danvers, and Thor go over the battle, with Steve promising the group that Tony will be fine. It takes a lot to rattle Iron Man, but the three mothers made him feel helpless. What about you, Captain Marvel? How are you holding up? She's okay, but looks down at the coffee in her hand. Something is coming, Stephen. Something worse is coming. She says gently, but their conversation is interrupted by an incoming message from T'Challa, who tells them that the other warlords seem to be quiet, merely hardening their defenses. However, the Mountain tells me that they have sent all of the envoys to the same location. A massive energy surge has been detected in the Florida Everglades, Carol. That's where the envoys are. I know you have all endured a great deal, but, he tells her and she nods, telling them that they will check it out. Iron Man needs some time, but Tony walks into the room in full armor. Iron Man needs a grilled cheese sandwich and a couple Tylenol. That's all. He tells them, and as they arrive at the Everglades, they discover that the envoys have all been killed. Well, that fight's over. Good job, everyone. Another one for the books. Iron Man jokes, and they move through the bodies trying to figure out what the envoys were doing here and if something else came through that portal. Maybe someone didn't want them using that, pointing to the nuclear bomb laying on the floor. Oh, and a sidebar, it's gonna blow pretty soon, he says as his AI scans the device. Carol holds up her hands, getting local reports that someone is attacking downtown Miami. Does anyone know who Kane Marco is? They're saying it's juggernauts. Plural, she says. And the three of them leave Tony to deal with the bomb, flying quickly over to Miami where they find the two juggernauts destroying things to create a large structure. Let's not go in hot. We still don't know what this is. Steve advises the team, but Thor shakes his head as he aims his hammer at the villains. Nay, Captain. The risk to Midgard of magical incursion is yet too great. He shouts, and the team jumps into battle with Thor taking several punches to the head, while Captain America blocks a blow with his mighty shield. Carol charges forward, but she goes straight through the Juggernaut, flying out the other side and colliding with Steve. The Juggernauts begin to lift up Thor, and his eyes crack with magical lightning. No soul, no mercy! Thor shouts, swinging his hammer and tearing through the strange construct. But the monsters begin to pull themselves back together, revealing that they are made of strangest crimson bands. Crimson bands of Sidorak? Wasn't that one of Strange's spells? Carol questions above them, and two of the Juggernauts continue to build a crimson spire far above their heads. Back over with Tony, though, he's beginning to realize he can't stop the bomb. So he stares at the Nexus and realizes that that's the only way to prevent the bomb from going off here. Carol begins to protest, but Tony ignores her, stepping through the portal. He looks at the strange kaleidoscope of colors and images that greet him on the other side, numerous portals to other worlds floating all around him. God, Stephen, the chaos. How did you stand it? He whispers, moving forward, finding someone half in and half out of a portal. He eventually goes through the portal, finding a child, and he asks the AI to scan where he's at. But the child gasps at him, telling him, "No help. Nobody left," pointing to the distant Crimson Spire. Meanwhile, back with our heroes, Thor's hammer is flying through the two Juggernauts once again. But as Thor begins to seemingly win against them, another Juggernaut arrives, slamming Thor's head between his hands, drawing blood from the mighty god. Back with Tony, they reach the spire, and the AI gives him a warning of the large psionic energy discharge coming. It's at that moment that Tony's eyes begin to glow and he sees everything. The child's history, the long discarded child of Sidorak, who found a family in this forgotten tribe, who learned that the Crimson Bands were hers to control as well. And when the three mothers came, she fought them with an army shaped by her will. But the child lost, and all who dwelt in this world perished. He realizes that the child was just a scared child trying to get rid of the monsters from underneath her bed. But he turns to find that she is already dead. He tells his AI to give him a full thrust, and he launches back towards the portal. Meanwhile, back with the Avengers, Thor is flying through the spire, trying his best to destroy it. Just as Tony comes back into radio range, telling Carol that they have to leave the spire. It's a headstone, he says, and he'll explain later. She agrees with him and tries to tell Thor to stand down, but he doesn't, whirling around, preparing to throw his hammer one last time to destroy it. Carol tells Tony that it's too late. Thor is going to destroy the armor. So Tony realizes that it's all down to a Hail Mary from Iron Man. He launches forward, ejecting from his armor at the last minute, letting it block the blow of Thor's hammer. Carol rushes to his side, wondering if Tony just died. Tony informs her to call off the 21-gun salute. "I lived a carpe another diem," he groans, and Thor lands, ordering Tony to explain himself as he retrieves the hammer. "I don't have to. She's going to," he tells them, pointing at one of the Juggernauts, and he taps her armored helmet. "Hey kid, don't leave me hanging. I took off my armor, now it's your turn," he tells her. And he tells the others that it is merely a wake as he removes the child from her armor, allowing her to place her hands on the spire. The psionic wave moves throughout the entire city, allowing them to see the destruction of the child's realm, of her people, to warn them that the child approaches. And with her work done, the warning put out, the child closes her eyes and allows the tears to finally fall. And that is the first 3 issues of this mighty crossover. If you want to see where this is going, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because we're either going to bring it to you every Wednesday or in a rush. I'm not really sure how we want to handle this yet, since there's kind of a movie going on. But to find out who killed Doctor Strange and to see where this is going, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, join us over at Patreon, and I'll see you next time right here at Comicstorian.